Welcome back to the Garden Report Part 2. We are brought to you by Blue Apron. Go to blueapron.com/Garden Report for 3 free meals and free shipping. Now, the Celtics are 26 games into the season. They're 14-12. They're just above 500, and yet they're in third place in the Eastern Conference standings. The Eastern Conference is almost entirely separated by like 2 games, basically numbers like 3 through 11 or so. So the Celtics are just sitting slightly above the fray, but they're in the fray, and they want it to be above it, clearly up near Toronto. Injuries have been obviously a huge issue for them. We've seen kind of like picking out individual games within large group of games where we actually see them at full force. So what is your assessment of this team moving forward?
It's mixed. It's definitely mixed. If you told me 26 games in, the Celtics are in third place in the Eastern Conference, are you happy with that? I'd be like, yeah, you got to be happy with that. I mean, obviously everyone knows the Cavs are going to be sitting at the top, and everyone expects the Raptors to be, right up there at the top as well. So if the Celtics are 3, great. 14-12, that's a disappointment. You want them to have a little more, you want a better record than that at this point in the season. And the thing that really bothers me about that record is they've lost every game that they should have lost. And you want them to be winning some games that maybe they shouldn't have won that one. You want them to be able to go on the road and beat Houston or beat Oklahoma City. I know Isaiah Thomas wasn't a part of Oklahoma City, but there have been games where he has been, playing, and they've been relatively healthy, and they haven't beaten the good teams, whether it's home or away. They've lost to the Raptors, they lost to the Cavs. We talked about this last time. So that's disappointing. But when healthy, I still think they're one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference, clearly. I mean, and they are also benefiting from some parity in the Eastern Conference right now because they're in third place in the Eastern Conference, but they're only a couple games out of 8th. So if they had lost tonight, who knows what
they would be in 8th place.
Exactly.
Lost,
so if we had run this video after a loss, I'd be like, well, I'm extremely disappointed. They're in 8th place in the Eastern Conference.
Sounds like you.
Yeah. So there's still a lot of basketball to be played, and I want to see a lot more with a healthy roster.
So firstly, just the Rockets game, not to nitpick, but it was literally Al Horford missing an open layup, so I'm not really reading into that game as some sort of systemic issue.
But they did lose, and you got to win. You got to win. You got to figure out how to win.
It comes down to a layup to decide the game. That's how NBA works. The issue is that you talked about how they're losing all the games that they should lose. The only games that they should lose, based on how good this team is basically like in Cleveland, in Golden State, and then probably against San Antonio and maybe the Clippers. I mean, the Clippers
that's what
kind
we
of fall
thought.
That's what they're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to hold them to that standard.
Sure.
Obviously, we all agree that injuries, lack of consistency, and continuity is an issue, but they're 26 games into the season, and I'm someone that's always preached patience to all these people that were jumping ship after 5 games.
Right.
But it's 5 times past that at this point. We saw tonight there were a lot of defensive communication issues. What Steve Clifford and the Hornets did so well was that they utilized the fact that Al Horford was guarding Cody Zeller or Marvin Williams. They would run those guys out of the paint, pull Horford out of there, and then when Horford would try to recover when there would be a drive from the other side, there were all sorts of communication issues. Avery Bradley and Horford miscommunicated, and they didn't know who was supposed to close out on a shooter. That happened with Marcus Smart, where basically there's all these plays where Al Horford thinks he's supposed to be covering the lane, and it ends up being that there's a shooter that everyone else thinks he's supposed to go out to. There are a lot of defensive miscommunications happening. It was something that happened a lot in the season earlier on. Clifford did a great job of putting the Celtics in position for that to happen again. That's not supposed to really ever happen, especially on a consistent basis.
No, I mean, you're right. And I think it's rare that, we know it's rare when a superstar free agent joins another team. It usually doesn't happen. A lot of those superstars stay with their teams. So when you bring on a guy that's such a big piece of what you do, there's gonna be some time it's gonna take for everything to click because he's such a big part of everything. He's not just a guy coming off the bench or a veteran guy like a Gerald Green where, if he messes up.
He was not coming off the bench.
Right. He will not be coming off the bench. It's just. And again, it goes back to health where you want them to be able to practice more, with a full roster. You don't want to be making excuses. You don't have much more time to make excuses. They're 26 games through. But I think, like Al Horford said after the game, they're starting to get it. They're starting to get together now, and you just gotta hope that it starts to translate on the court.
And this episode was building momentum, but we got to cut it there. So for Jimmy, for Kyle
We have to
behind
cut it before
the
they
camera.
literally take the
before
cord
literally
apart.
the cord is gone. I'm Jared. We'll be back for another episode of the Garden Report on Friday after the Oklahoma City Thunder. I will not be there, though, because I'll be on my way to New York, and we'll have some coverage for you coming out of the Christmas Day game in New York. So for
Merry Christmas.
everybody here,
Happy
for Blue
Hanukkah.
Apron, thank you, sir, which will also be on Christmas, coincidentally.
Yeah,
It works out.
right?
So
Can't
don't
even get
forget
one day to ourselves.
blueapron.com/Garden Report for 3 free meals and free shipping. We will see you next time on the Garden Report on CLNS and Celtics blog.